Okay. Recording in progress. Great. So I'd like to welcome you all to Living Laudato Si. And as we described, this is for both ourselves and also for our parish too, to see what we can learn from Pope Francis and see what we can do to help God's creation, which is what the whole topic of his encyclical was. So we already actually did this, so we don't need to do that. So I'd like to start in a different way. We're so used to saying the same prayers all the time. So I'd like us to do the sign of the cross in a little bit different way. And if you would just mute yourself, I'd like you to pray, but we got almost 20 people here. So we don't want Babel. So if you can mute yourself and join me in praying to start. In the name of the Creator and of the Redeemer and of the Sanctifier, amen. And you'll notice that the icon here is one that is Native American because Christ belongs to everyone. And just to see the Son, the Spirit, and the Father there is kind of a way of seeing the world in a different way. And I hope that's something that we can take away from our study. We can learn a lot from our Native brothers and sisters about the way the world should work. So here's our prayer. This is one that actually is in Laudato Si, a prayer for the earth. All-powerful God, you are present in the whole universe and in the smallest of your creatures. You embrace with your tenderness all that exists. Pour out upon us the power of your love, that we may protect life and beauty. Fill us with peace, that we may live as brothers and sisters, harming no one. And we'll finish this prayer at the end. So I asked you, and I'm just noticing that a lot of my screen is covered up with your wonderful pictures, but if you find the same thing is happening, if you go to the upper right and the thing that looks like Rubik's Cube with all the squares, move to the left of that to that little bar. And if you click that, all the pictures disappear and you can see more of the screen. Now, I don't know if that's true for you or not, but this is, so I asked you why you were doing this. And so this is why I'm so interested in trying to protect God's creation and especially our common home. I'm looking to the future in some cases because I have wonderful grandchildren and I know that they are going to be confronted with some of these issues that the Pope points out. I know that I love the natural world. It really gives me such sustenance. And, I just feel at peace when I'm outside in the woods or in the fields. I love monarch butterflies. And that is something that isn't endangered right now because of climate change and because of biodiversity loss. So, another reason why I'm so interested in this area. And then, of course, we go to Honduras and, we see the impact of droughts. You can look at the ground there. There's not even any green plants growing. So it's something that is kind of universal, kind of global, but also very personal for me. Now, I'd like to give you a God's eye view of the earth. This is our common home. And if you look at it and just reflect a little bit, you realize that there are no geographic boundaries here. Everything that we need to survive is here, right in front of you. There's air, there's water, there's green plants, there's animals. You can't see them, but they're there. But all the things that we need to survive are on this one planet. And this is what we want to protect because we know that these systems that are keeping us alive are being challenged right now. I did have a student at Clark Middle School in eighth grade science who later grew up to be 28 years old and who wrote a book called The End of Nature. And I thought, oh my gosh, that sounds pretty grim. But he's right. There's no place on this planet that we're looking at that hasn't been touched by human activity because of climate change, because the atmosphere is a benefit of all and it reaches all. Um, his name is Bill McKibben. Some of you may be familiar with that name. He's a big environmentalist. We're very proud of him because he grew up in Lexington. But he really has inspired a lot of people, including me, to take action to try to promote care for our common home. So, Care for Our Common Home, that's the subtitle of this document. Uh, the Pope wrote an encyclical, which is a letter, and typically these letters from the popes are written in Latin. And so the first two words in the document are what the name of the document becomes. However, the first two words of his document, Laudato Si, are actually words from Old Italian, medieval Italian, and they're words spoken by Saint Francis. And Laudato Si, mi Signore, means praised be you, my Lord. And this is the beginning of that beautiful prayer from Saint Francis, where he talks about praise to my brother sun, sister moon, and then he talks about sister Mother Earth, who sustains and governs us. So he really has a sense of relationship with the natural world. It isn't the humans on top dominion type relationship. It's the idea that we are all brothers and sisters, even all the creatures of the earth as well. And he reminds us that our common home is like a sister with whom we share our life and a beautiful mother who opens her arms to embrace us. And we'll talk a little bit more about this next week. But it's kind of interesting that that Pope Francis took the name of Francis because of St. Francis of Assisi. And I think it's kind of cool that that's my name too. So anyhow, maybe I sort of came by this naturally, but at any rate, I'm very inspired both by Pope Francis and St. Francis of Assisi. By the way, I don't know if you saw, but his bones are actually being displayed in the town of Assisi right now. And I think they're going to be moved to Rome because it's the 800th anniversary of his death. It's also the 10th anniversary of Laudato Si, so it's very appropriate that we do this study right now. So just a quick overview of the document Laudato Si. The Pope actually wrote this to every person on earth because all of the things that are happening to our common home are happening to everybody. We saw that God's eye view of the earth. So there are 6 chapters, and so that's why we have 6 meetings. And our first chapter is one that we'll be dealing with tonight. We'll talk a little bit about the introduction, but also what's happening in our common home is a theme tonight. So the Pope says this sister, he was talking about Mother Earth, this sister now cries out to us because of the harm that we have inflicted on her. Not sure why this is jumping. By our irresponsible use and abuse of the goods with which God has endowed her. We have forgotten that we ourselves are dust of the earth. Our very bodies are made of her elements. We breathe her air and we receive life and refreshment from her waters. I thought of that on Ash Wednesday, thinking, we really are made from the dust of the earth, and we actually, the dust of the earth came from our star, the sun, and the sun came from previous stars. So we really are made of stardust, and we are connected. The Pope says if we no longer speak the language of fraternity and beauty in our relationship with the world, gosh, what is happening here? If we no longer speak the language of fraternity and beauty in our relationship with the world, our attitude will be that of masters, consumers, and ruthless exploiters. And unfortunately, that is happening. So we really need to get back to that language of kinship, actually. The urgent challenge to protect our common home includes a concern to bring the whole human family together to seek a sustainable and integral development. For we know that things can change, and that really gives me hope when I hear the Pope say that, and not only Pope Francis, but also Pope Leo. So in this first chapter, there are a number of topics. We'll be talking about 1 through 4, and then we'll take a little break. Actually, we'll take a little break after the first one, and then we'll have the rest of them. I have a short video from it used to be Brother Dan Horan, but he will talk about the last few. And we'll have a little chance after that to get together and breakout sessions to sort of hear what you're thinking about these statements by the Pope and, you know, how they integrate with your life. So I think this one statement is really profound in my view, and that is that our goal in reading Laudato Si and living Laudato Si is to become painfully aware, to dare to turn what is happening to the world into our own personal suffering, and thus to discover what each of us can do about it. And, you know, I think Lent, we're talking about what happened to Jesus and his suffering and so on. And he sort of took on the world's cares and the sins of the world. And I guess, you know, we're being invited to, you know, suck it up and to do that as well. It's very easy for us to do the comfortable thing. And so I'm proud of you all for joining tonight, because we're going to do some stuff that's kind of tough. So. Now, before this document was released, there was a lot of talk, a lot of discussion, and there were a whole bunch of people who said, oh, this is a bunch of baloney. What does the Pope know about science? Because the word was that this was a climate change document. You know, what does the Pope know? Well, it turns out that the Pope was trained as a chemist before he went to the seminary. So he actually does know a lot of science and a lot about climate change. He enlisted the help of scientists from the Vatican Observatory and other scientists around the world, as well as a priest who actually gave a talk at Sacred Heart a number of years ago, Sean McDonough, helped him with the first chapter, the one that we're talking about tonight. This, by the way, is a protest on Boston Common organized by scientists. So we know that climate change, one of the urgent issues that the Pope is talking about, is a moral issue. And I think we'll see that that really is the case as we go on. Just a little quick science. You know that I'm a science teacher. I was going to say former, but I think I still am teaching science. Anyhow, just a little quick review. We know that the Earth is warm, sort of a Goldilocks type warm, just right, not too hot, not too cold, because carbon dioxide accumulates in the atmosphere, and that absorbs the energy that's sort of radiated out from the Earth and keeps us a nice temperature. However, if you keep adding more and more carbon dioxide to the atmosphere, it's like putting a whole bunch of blankets on top of you when you're trying to sleep, and eventually there's going to be too many and you get too hot. And that's actually what's happening now, because the natural carbon dioxide that is in the atmosphere has been enhanced so much, especially by burning fossil fuels, by burning stuff, basically. And there are a couple of other things that contribute as well, but that's the main one. And you know, that is not happening naturally. That's happening because we do it. So this is called human enhanced greenhouse effect. Forget the greenhouse. Just think about the fact that we have too many blankets on the earth and we're the ones that are putting them on. So now Pope Leo advised me not to do this. He said, do not use data and graphs and everything, because everybody sort of glazes over. But, you know, I couldn't resist because I'm a science teacher. But at any rate, this does actually reach your heart at some level because you can see that between the time that we really started burning fossil fuels in the 1800s and the late 1800s and today, this stops in 2016, but the similar kind of thing is happening now is as the carbon dioxide increases in the atmosphere, the temperature is going up and up and up. And nowadays, it's at 430 parts per million, so it really exceeds the top line there. And scientists have told us that 350 parts per million is considered a safe level. So we're already into the area where we're beginning to feel the impacts of climate change. And, many, many people, including most scientists, are very concerned about that. So this trend is real. We can document it. And uh, a recent study said it's 100% sure that it's people that are causing this to happen. So it is us. You can see, transportation, burning gasoline in cars, burning oil or natural gas or even coal, which is being promoted now, believe it or not, by our government, produces carbon dioxide and a lot of other toxic materials and particulates and things that are very bad for the health of people involved, especially those who have to live near these places, where they're producing energy. And 97% of climate scientists agree that it's people that are warming the climate. So the Pope acknowledges this. He says it's a very solid scientific consensus that we're witnessing a disturbing warming of the climatic system. And he says right out that it's fossil fuels that are doing it on the whole. He also acknowledges that the climate is a common good. We looked at that God's eye view of the earth, and you didn't see any boundaries there. So that the whole of the climate is going to affect everybody, us and people on the other side of the world, everyone, and every living thing, really, too. So the first thing is that it's happening. Second thing is it's us, and then it's bad. We know that there are impacts from climate change. It's a global problem. It has implications that are not just environmental, but social, economic, political, and for the distribution of goods. And it represents one of the huge challenges facing humanity in our day. It's not something that's going to happen in the future. It's happening right now. So this very nice drawing that looks like a very nice place to be, but if you look at it closely, um, you can see some of the impacts of climate change, and I'm just starting at the upper right here where it says less snow and ice might be something that we would prefer right now, uh, um, but this is a huge problem for people who depend on glaciers for their drinking water. This includes people in California, people in the Alps, people in China and India and the Himalayas. When snow, which stores water, sort of like a reservoir, melts, the water's gone, and you do not have access to the water all year. So this is going to be a huge impact, have huge impact on millions and millions of people where they will not have a source of fresh water. We know that there are many droughts and wildfires. Some of you maybe have been impacted by the wildfires in Canada, and we were seeing the impact of that here in Massachusetts. There was that awful fire in California and near Los Angeles. So these things are happening, and we used to be able to say that no one um, event could be pinned. We couldn't pin climate change on any one event, but now scientists have developed an attribution uh, facility that is able to say what percent of an event has been impacted by climate change. So they can identify specific events, and this wildfire would not have happened in the way that it did if there wasn't for climate change in California. You can see the city here, higher temperatures. We already know that people in Dorchester and Roxbury suffer terribly when it's very hot, and we're getting many more hotter days in the summer in Boston, especially, where there's a lot of concrete and so on. And a lot of those folks do not have air conditioning. We turn our air conditioner up, which actually is can make the problem worse because you have to burn fossil fuels to get your air conditioner to work. Although in Lexington, we don't have to do that as much as other places because we have a certain percentage of renewable energy that is in our mix. But at any rate, we still have to use some of the fossil fuels to produce our energy. And it turns out that in some places on Earth, I think in India, it got so hot that people could not work. So if people can't work, if there's droughts, if there's wildfires, that's going to eliminate your ability to live in a certain place. And so that produces a lot of migration. Everybody doesn't migrate because of climate change, but there's a certain large percentage of people who do. And we know, the impact of that problem in our country right now. The fact that people are desperate to get to a place where the climate is more conducive to life, basically. Um, the ocean, I'm not going to go on too much because there's just too many things, but you can see there's a lot of impacts. Stronger storms. I did want to talk about that because actually we did have one today. So I'll talk about that a little bit later. But you can see that floods, due to the fact that there's more moisture in the air, the oceans are warming, that when that water gets dumped, say in Bangladesh, I mean, there are millions of people that have to move. All their stuff in their house gets wet and moldy and so on. And it turns out that, they have so little to do with the problem. And we have so much, especially historically. Historically, we have produced more CO2 than any other country. And the fact that CO2 stays in the atmosphere for a fairly long time, hundreds of years, or in some cases, even thousands of years, we're still suffering from the stuff that our ancestors put into the air here in the US. And although we didn't do it, still, once we know about that, I think we're obligated to do something to make it better. So I just wanted to put this in here because it's not just Bangladesh that suffers from floods. This is Sister Tess, who some of you may know from St. Catherine Drexel, and she lives in Quincy. And she needed a raft to get into her apartment. And you can see her house there. And this was a couple of years ago, not two, but 8 feet of floodwaters in Quincy. So it's happening now. It may even be happening today because they were talking about flooding because of the winds and the storm. Now, here's what we experienced today, just to put it in perspective. Fortunately, we have the ability to adapt so that, we're protected. We're in warm houses. We don't have, the situation like we saw in Bangladesh. They have no choices of how they can, stay comfortable, et cetera. So at any rate, our snowstorm today actually had a climate aspect to it. I mentioned the warming waters, and the warming waters actually contribute in the ocean, contribute more moisture. I forget what percentage, but I think something like 10% more moisture than you would normally expect. And that moisture, when it hits cold air, just condenses and forms clouds. And if the air continues to be cold, it snows. Now, how does the cold air get down here? I thought the planet was warming. Well, it is. And usually there is a cap of cold air on the North Pole called the polar vortex. Usually that stays on the North Pole, near the North Pole. It's very cold air, although it too is warming faster than most other places on Earth, but it's still very cold. And there is sort of a fence of winds that keep that vortex up on the North Pole. Well, if the fence gets weakened, and this is what's happening where warm air is coming up and weakening that fence that kind of holds the cold air up into the north, then it starts spreading down. And you can see the little animated thing at the top where that cold air is spreading down to us. And sometimes that polar jet stream gets stuck. And that's what happened to us where it's been so cold for so long. So climate change is making our atmosphere unstable, and that's why we're having such cold weather right now and so much snow. And it just doesn't seem logical, though, if you think, oh, our planet is warming. Well, there are other impacts. Here's a few that might not be as dire as, having floods in Bangladesh, but still, just to bring it to everyday life. If you watch the Winter Olympics from 1956 to 1965, about 10 years, there were 214 days of freezing weather in, I think it was for the Winter Olympics, anyhow. And then from the space of 2016 to 2025, there were only 173 days of freezing weather. So our um, ski facilities in the north of New England are getting very worried about whether they're going to be able to survive because of climate change. And then if you like your coffee, that's also impacted by climate change, both from the cost, because there are fewer beans, and also the taste. They're both impacted by climate change, where the temperature has to be just right for good coffee, and it is changing. So I thought I'd throw this in here just for fun. So we've already talked about the first few things, the big summary, and this, if you talk with anybody, this is a good thing to say. Climate change is here. It's us, not just us personally, but also the corporations. I think there are like 100 corporations that we can attribute like 76% of climate change to. Um, and many of them have lied about what's happening and trying to promote the idea that, oh, we didn't know that, or, maybe it's not as bad. How do you know that this is happening? So we've heard all this misinformation. We know it's bad. And then finally, there is hope. And the hope that we have is motivated by some of the things that you see on the professor's board here. Here's the guy in the back that's saying, what if it's a big hoax and we created a better world for nothing? And then the list, energy independence, preserve rainforest, sustainability, green jobs, blah, 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 clean water and air, healthy children and healthy adults as well. So there are lots of good reasons to address the situation, clean up the air, clean up the water. We'll see that in a little while. But there is hope. The hope, unfortunately, right now is not so much on the federal level, and we have to do something about that. But we do have hope in the state. We're talking right now about a climate bill, and we can talk about this later with some details, but there is debate about energy affordability and that sort of thing. But uh, if people understand the importance of moving towards clean energy and moving away from fossil fuels, I think it will help to get some major legislation passed. In the town of Lexington, we have been really, really good about emphasizing solar, about trying to do what we can to make our energy cleaner. We actually have what they call community choice, which has more clean energy than the normal amount from Eversource. Okay, so we'll stop for a second, and I just want you to put something in the chat and say, in your opinion, what's the worst current impact of climate change? And you've heard a lot of different things, maybe something you've read in the paper, whatever, and just sort of put a quick message in the chat. So what's the worst current impact that you're concerned about? Not seeing any chats.
How do I get in?
Extended extreme storms. Yeah. Yeah. The extreme weather is something that's really, yeah, an impact on the ocean, huge. I mean, we're worried about ocean currents, the Atlantic, what do they call it? The Gulf Stream, yeah, and which keeps Europe warm, by the way. So if that gets messed up, okay, and also very poor people can't they contribute the least to the problem, but they don't have the wherewithal to do anything about it. We could move theoretically. We could sell our house and move somewhere. They can't. They have to stay there. Corporate waste, really good. Yeah. Drought in Africa. Oh my gosh. You know, all the turmoil in Africa, and the prediction is if water becomes a very rare resource, that's going to create violence and wars as well. So, climate refugees, yeah, we're seeing that big time in our country. Forced migration, yeah. I forget how there are predictions for how many millions of people will be forced to migrate and where are they going to migrate to, you know, flooding, loss of biodiversity, opportunities for appreciation of creation are dispiriting. Yeah. Well, thank you for reflecting on that.
Couldn't get to the chat. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Well, just keep putting it in there, Holly. It'll be people will be able to see it. Yeah, that's good. The other thing that he mentions, and this is sort of related to climate change because we're actually throwing away the results of burning fossil fuels. So the you know, we're buying fossil fuels. I mean, I have to admit, my house, I'm burning oil. I do have a heat pump, but my whole house is not on heat pumps. So I'm burning some oil, and then the results of that are CO2 that's thrown into the atmosphere, and it's sort of like putting trash in somebody else's yard. I'm not paying for it; it's just going out there. It's a it doesn't have value to me, so I don't even think about it, you know. And I think most people don't really think about where their trash goes to. But every year, hundreds of millions of tons of trash are generated, and oops, um, and frequently no measures are taken until after people's health or the health of the environment has been irreversibly affected. And the Pope actually says the earth, our home, is beginning to look more and more like an immense pile of filth, which is pretty out there. But you can see in some places that that really is true. And he says we have forgotten that we ourselves are made of the dust of the earth. Oh my goodness. Um, a- and we're made of the elements of the earth. We breathe her air and we receive life and refreshment from her waters. So, you know, we really are part of the earth. I think most people know the issue with plastics is that they don't go away. You know, you can bury them, but it's thousands of years before they actually decompose, and they're very useful, which is part of the problem because it's hard to find replacement things that act as plastic does. But now we're becoming more aware of the health issues of microplastics, that they're finding little tiny bits of plastics in human bodies. We don't know exactly what the impact is, but there's a lot of plastic, and because it doesn't go away, when you throw it away, it's either burned, which is what happens to our stuff in Lexington. It's burned in North Andover, and the poor folks in Lawrence have to breathe the fumes from that. We used to be able to send our plastic waste to China, and now they have not allowed us to do that anymore. So, you know, even if you recycle stuff, sometimes it gets trashed because they don't have a market for sending it anywhere. I hear all the time, I get stuff from Verizon. Oh, we'll give you a new phone. We'll give you this, you know, and every year they want you to get a new phone. And a new computer, et cetera, et cetera. And I mean, I have to admit, I sort of fall prey to that myself. But when you think about it, what do they do with the old stuff? Sometimes they do refurbish it, but sometimes it just goes to a third world country, and you can see these little kids picking apart some of the elements of electronic waste, and some of that stuff is pretty toxic. So our trash is still impacting other people. And we throw out electronic waste a lot more than other countries. I guess China is second, but everybody else, including Germany, which is a very advanced civilization, UK, et cetera, much, much lower. So it's a real question for Americans. How come we are so wasteful? Um, Another issue has to do with water, and I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but just to point out that when we think about water, we don't always realize that there isn't that much of it on the earth. So this is a picture of the earth without any water, except it's all globed up into these blue bubbles. The big blue bubble is all the water on, in, and above the earth. And the little bubble right here, can you see my pointer? I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah. Great. So that is all the liquid fresh water. But then the part that we usually draw our water from for drinking, like the Quabbin Reservoir, freshwater lakes and rivers is this little tiny dot right here. So when we think about how precious that water is and how much we have to share it with, what, 8 billion people on Earth, it becomes a real problem. And especially where there are some industries that suck up a lot of water. I mean, even some of your food actually, almonds, I think, require a lot of water to grow. But now that we have AI, which sucks up a lot of energy, and it also uses a lot of water. These issues are just huge, and if you don't know about them, you can't really do anything about them. So it's good to educate yourself on what is happening to our common home. That's the theme of this chapter. Um, this is on the right-hand side is a card that the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops put out, and I belong to a small group of people that helped them to try to shape the language on this. I was really happy when they put it out. But this sort of gives a big picture of life. We hear a lot about abortion and about, year end of life issues from our archdiocese and from the bishops. But really, our challenge is to protect life, period, from beginning to end and from all, oh gosh, from all aspects. Wow. Okay. So, so we want to preserve what sustains life. We need to have clean air and clean water, and those are the two things that we just spoke about. Another aspect that the Pope is talking about is the extinction crisis. And he says, because of us, thousands of species will no longer give glory to God by their very existence, nor convey their message to us. And we have no right to do that, to cause animals to become extinct. We know that happens in evolution, but the speed with which animals are becoming extinct is huge, and plants as well. So, it's just something that we need to think about and be aware of, especially because the Pope says all creatures are connected and must be cherished with love and respect, not just because they benefit us, but just because they are God's creatures and they reflect God as well. And the fact that we all depend on one another. So that's another aspect that we risk losing up to 50% of land-based species. So this is a huge problem. Just one that I think of is the fact that bees are having a problem now in recent decades. And part of that, they think, there's a lot of possible causes, but part of it is pesticide use. There's a chemical called no, nicotinoids. Is that right, Catherine? Anyhow, Um, so there's a chemical that actually is coating seeds now, and it causes the plants, every part of the plant to be poisonous. So when honeybee comes to that plant, they gather some of this nico. Oh gosh,
You said it right.
yeah.
There are different ways to say it. That's why it's confusing. It's okay. You did it right.
Thank you, Catherine. Yeah. But at any rate, so there's a bill in the State House right now to prevent the seeds from being coated with this pesticide, which is they think poisonous to bees. So these are the three things that we talked about: climate change, water scarcity, cry of the earth, cry of the poor. And so what I'd like to do now is to ask you what your personal reaction is to these crises that we've talked about, or, if you've read the chapter beforehand, if there's anything that popped out at you, just, so what are you thinking so far? And then have you done anything to deal with these crises, or do you know of anything that's happening? And what gives you hope? So I'm going to stop sharing right now. I am going to put you into um, some groups, and let's see how many people we have here. 6 times 3 is 18, 19, 20. Okay, so I'm going to do 5 groups. Okay. And I'm going to give you, let's say 10 minutes or so to reflect on those questions. I'll try to get back and put them into the chat here so you can see them. But at any rate, it's mainly, what are you thinking so far and what you've heard or what you've read from the document? And then are you doing anything to address some of these crises? And then what gives you hope? Okay, any questions about what to do? Now, you'll get a little notice that says join group some number. Just click on that and then you'll get into the group. And I can send you messages while you're there. So, big brother. So, okay, well, good luck and introduce yourself and then maybe have one person who can sum up what came up in your group in just a few sentences. I think we'll probably try to do that in the chat unless we have time otherwise. So, go for it.
Mm.
Okay, so just click on the invitation that you got.
Hey, friend.
Hi, Eric. How are you?
Hey, good, thanks. Sounds like it's going well. I'm listening in while taking care of some things I've got to finish here, but
Okay.
good to see everyone.
Okay. So usually I can do my arrow buttons on my computer to change the slide, but somehow it doesn't seem to work. So I'm going back and forth and yikes. Okay. So 8 o'clock.
Great,
So,
yeah, I think it's good structure.
oh, good. Well, let's see. I wanted to put the questions. I don't know if I put a question in the chat now, does it go to all the rooms?
I think so, because everyone will still see it. It's like a common chat.
Okay. Let's see. All right. Breakout room. Yes. Okay. So, mm, okay. So I'm going to try to do this here and see if it works. Message to everyone, it says.
Yeah, because yeah, I think they should see it.
Oh, good. Okay. What I can do, I guess, is go into these rooms and see. Uh, see.
But,
Hop
yeah.
in.
I was gonna go check in with some neighbors about something. Do you
Sure.
think there's some other items later in the presentation that you'd like me to be here for, or what are you thinking?
I think we're good. I think I have like a 13-minute thing from
Oh,
Dan.
brother.
So yeah.
And yeah.
And then
Yeah.
I just give people, some time at the end.
Oh, okay. Nice. Yeah,
So I
that's like,
think we're good, but yeah, but your conversation with me was really helpful. And I may say at the end that, climate wasn't the key thing that maybe I emphasized more, but
it's okay. It's everything everywhere all at once.
how do we miss? Well, I think especially, trying to explain the snow too. And
Well, it's all the like extreme weather stuff and just
yeah,
mm.
yeah. Wow. So I'm gonna go in and
And it's also like with climate change, like it's so variable on where you are, like
well, it's true, yeah. And we don't see half of the things that, you know.
exactly. Yeah. So, okie doke. Well,
Okay,
it's good to see you.
thanks for dropping in.
Yeah, no, I will try to be next Monday. I think I should be able to be more attentive. Or
Oh, good. Well, that will be a key one too, the spiritual part of
yeah,
it.
yeah.
So if I know I know the recording stops during breakout rooms, but does it automatically start up again or do I have to, do you know?
I would imagine if it automatically stops, it'll automatically start again.
Oh, okay. I guess I'll be, yeah, it says recording. Well, I don't know.
You could put a little timer on your phone so that it reminds you to check. I don't know.
I don't want them to record our conversation though. Good. So I'd like to hear from people about what happened in your conversation. And so many people, if one person from each group can write down just a few words about what concerns came up for you, what are things that are happening that give you hope that people are trying to address these problems. So if you would just put that in the chat, that would be great, and I can see the chat
I have
now.
to sign off because my battery is going dead and it's not
Oh no.
recharging. So I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Well, thanks for coming.
Good
I'll
night,
see you
Mary.
next
Be
week. Bye
safe.
bye.
Nighty night.
Good night.
Okay, so
Oh,
let's
Tish,
well, while we're waiting for people to put things in the chat, is there anybody who could sort of summarize what you talked about? I heard different topics. I sort of popped in at different places. Jeffrey?
Our group, we didn't see a lot of hope initially. Of course, the first chapter doesn't really have a lot of hope because it's listing the problem. Um, we're very concerned. We feel everyone's feeling sad, discouraged, somewhat overwhelmed by the entire problem, and yet we see hope. But the hope is based on conversion. It's based on the conversion of ourselves, of our parish, of our politics, of the way we live, the way we raise our monies, the way we use our monies. But unless we do that conversion, and it's way beyond our parish, it's way beyond the individual, unless we do it kind of in a worldwide process, ultimately, this is going to end badly. And it's very clear. And that was kind of where we came through. But we did see hope in groups like this. I mean, obviously, the parish is a form of hope because we are addressing it. We are going to begin to address it in the parts that we can, but it's really based, I think, ultimately on conversion, repentance, uh, empathy, and feeling the pain of the world and of our sisters and brothers, sister sun, brother moon, and all the animals and everything else. That's kind of, if anyone wants to add that I didn't, but that's kind of what we all talked about.
Okay. So I'm looking at the chat and I'm realizing that we won't have time for all the groups to report. So is there anybody else who would like to speak and then others can sort of put in the chat and I can save that and send it out to you because I'm looking at the time here now as well. So anybody else who wants to summarize from their group?
I'm sorry.
Okay. So,
Hey, how about you?
uh, who are you talking to, Bruce? Oh,
I, I was talking to Faye because I think she
oh, Faye.
had
Yeah.
some very good comments and maybe she could share them.
Faye, do you want to quickly say?
Sure, just quickly. We talked about kinship, which is discussed in the introduction of this document. And Fran actually talked about it too in your talk. And that kinship is something that we at Sacred Heart can really work on and develop. And by coming together and promoting all of these ideas in the Laudato Si, it may explode beyond us, let's hope, and go to our children and to other parishes, and let's make it a thing.
Yeah, I like that idea.
That's lovely.
Wow. I don't want to cut people off, but if you have other comments, you can keep putting them in the chat. There are a couple of other sections in this chapter, and I'd like to introduce you to, at least at the time, he was Brother Dan Horan. Anybody ever heard of him? Or okay, so I want to see how this works for you. So I'm going to share my screen, and I want everybody to keep their fingers crossed. Okay. Uh,
Oh, there he is.
You're getting close.
Yeah, but there he is. Okay, and
Good.
okay, so I need um okay, I'm gonna stop sharing and I'm gonna start because I need to, oh, there we go. Okay, so I want to optimize the video. Okay, there we go. Okay, there he is. So hopefully keep your fingers crossed because I want to hear him.
Three signs of the time that Pope Francis mentions in the second half of chapter 1 is the decline in quality of human life as well as the breakdown of society. Now, this is a continuation in a way of Pope Francis's theme of addressing the way in which we culturally view the world and one another in a throwaway manner, what he calls a throwaway culture. He points in a particular way with some scrutiny to technology and to media. He says that, one of the problems that we have today is that digital culture has really stopped some people. It can prevent them from learning to live wisely. What he's getting at here, it seems to me, is that he's concerned about the siloing of people's experience. The way in which that because of technology, because of the internet, because of 24-hour cable news networks that really are concerned about advertising ratings and viewership, that they entertain people, that they give people what they want to hear and not the experience of the world as it actually is, or the news that people may not want to see. If something is troubling or difficult or may challenge their own perception or idea of themselves, there's a likelihood that they may switch the channel and watch something else, any one of the many thousands of television channels that are available today. So Pope Francis points to this kind of what I call a siloing, this kind of introspection that's not good, but rather is the reinforcement of blinders that don't allow us to take into consideration the broader world or experience of others. He says that this has caused people to really stop the experience or the process of learning to live wisely, that people don't discern anymore. They just reinscribe what it is they already believe or hold to be true. We see that play out in so many rather unfortunate ways, particularly in our society in the United States. I mentioned in the previous episode that Pope Francis doesn't have any patience or any tolerance for discussion about the possibility that there isn't human effects in global climate change, that this is a scientific fact. It's something that well over 95% of the world's scientists hold in consensus, that they agree upon. It's only in some small pockets that people debate about this stuff, and in the United States, this is one example of where we are way, way, way off the mark, way, way, way in a different place conceptually and culturally from the rest of the world. And that's a problem. The siloing, it contributes to a decline in human life. It contributes in a breakdown of society, as Pope Francis puts it. The next theme or sign of the time that Pope Francis holds up for our examination in light of the gospel is that of global inequality. And it's really here that we see the connection between the environment and global poverty in great, great detail. Pope Francis says that this global inequality, the way that so few, a minority of the population of the globe, live so extravagantly and with such comfort and luxury, and the fact that so many people live in poverty is a real problem, and there is a tremendous gap between the two. He also says that it is the poor, the global poor, who most acutely, most painfully, most viscerally experience, in an immediate sense, the real impact, the effects of global climate change and the pollution that we have wrought upon this world. And that, any kind of substantive or thorough environmental response to the crises, whether it be pollution or whether it's climate change, whatever the many issues are that we need to address and face today, he says that in order for it to be integral, in order for it to be kind of wholesome and substantive, it must be and take into consideration a social approach. It has to be a response that incorporates questions of class and of global inequality, questions of economic disparity, the fact that so many suffer while so few gain and benefit and continue to grow wealthy and rich. In other words, as Pope Francis says, borrowing an expression that was, if not coined, made rather famous in a book by the Brazilian liberation theologian and former Franciscan friar Leonardo Boff, Pope Francis says that we must hear both the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor. And it's here in terms of global inequality that these two things really do come together. The last of these themes, or signs of the time, that Pope Francis presents to us is that which he names the weak responses. He looks back over our history in kind of the recent history, but as well as over the last several centuries, and he says that our responses to these environmental crises have been inadequate. They've been weak. They've been almost non-existent in many circles and in many capacities. He says that we can no longer rely solely on technology to kind of get us out of this problem, out of these circumstances. In no small part, and this is something really he's taking from Pope Benedict XVI. It's something he continues moving forward in the way that his predecessor had highlighted. Pope Benedict, in his own writings, had made clear that technology in and of itself is not a bad, it's not an evil, but our over-reliance on technology, our kind of succumbing to making technology an idol that will solve all of our problems, will be the great panacea of our crises, whether they be economic, whether they be in terms of the environment, whatever it is. This is a real problem. We have to step back and reassess our humility in relationship to the technology that we humans, using the great gifts God has given us, have created. So Pope Francis says that we cannot rely on technology alone to get us out of this crisis, that these problems have been caused in no small part by technologies. Again, he reiterates that technology is not a bad thing in and of itself, but it's not the answer, not by itself anyways, to the problem of environmental degradation, pollution, climate change, and the like. And he says, as he repeats in his homilies and in other venues, as he mentioned in his apostolic exhortation, The Joy of the Gospel, that we have to move outside of our indifference. Sure, there are some people who are polluting, some people who are contributing in more concrete or explicit ways to the problems of the environment, as well as to the problems of global poverty. He said, but one of the greatest problems is what he identifies as our indifference, our willful ignorance, our lack of care for one another. We need to get out of that. We must move beyond the indifference. He says we must also move beyond in the current economic systems that we have. He says that capitalism is not a good in and of itself either, and that the market economy, the way that we are so reliant on consumption, that we're so reliant on financial practices that benefit the rich and disproportionately negatively affect the poor. He says we have to move beyond this. We have to shift our economic views, because they have consequences for the environment, as we've seen, dating all the way back to the Industrial Revolution and prior, but it also has negative effects in terms of our society when it comes to the gap in the economy, when it comes to a disproportionately negative experience for the poor. He says we have to get outside of this. We can no longer turn a blind eye to the injustices of our economic system. We must also stop dismissing or overly romanticizing and then just kind of putting aside various calls to respond to environmental problems and global poverty in the world. He says that this has been a real issue. It's not something that's often expressed or articulated as clearly, but that oftentimes people talk about the environment or concern for it, and you hear this expression in a derogatory way that, oh, they're just quote unquote hippies, or they're tree huggers, or whatever it may be. And that those who work for radical environmental justice are often dismissed as being unwell or crazy or something like that, that they're fanatics or some sort of unbridled radicals. And Pope Francis says we have to leave that kind of stereotype aside. This is something that concerns all of us, and we should embrace the need for change. We have to move beyond these kind of stereotypings and name callings that arise. And finally, he says, with regard to these weak responses, that we have to stop pretending that nothing is wrong. There are people who, embrace a willful ignorance. There are people who embrace a sort of willful animosity. But there are people far too often who, in the spirit of indifference, embrace a willful ignorance. I just don't want to know. It's just too overwhelming. It's just too much. I can't be bothered by this. And Pope Francis says that we have to move beyond that. We have to move beyond pretending that nothing is wrong, that we don't have a problem on our hands, because we most certainly do. Otherwise, we're only going to replicate these weak responses that we've already seen, and that can no longer be the case. Pope Francis wraps up chapter 1 with a brief conclusion, and he says in it that though it is the Church's responsibility to call all the members, all Christians, to respond to these challenges, to, as Gaudium et Spes and the Pastoral Constitution on the Church in the modern world puts it, we are all called to scrutinize the signs of the time in light of the gospel. Pope Francis admits that the Church is not competent, it is not responsible for expressing and kind of delivering the concrete actions that need to take place. What are these best practices that have to be pursued? Pope Francis says, and rightly so, that there are others, scientists, activists, people who are on the ground, people who have more experience in these areas, who are better suited to help guide us in terms of the concrete actions. What isn't up for grab, though, Pope Francis makes clear, is that we must respond. This is the Church's call, that in light of the gospel, we have to embrace our call to care for the earth, to care for one another, to hear the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor. So we must respond now. And he invites us to look more deeply into what those possible responses may be, and to not be indifferent, not to be complacent, and to actually act to go forward. As always, I'd like to thank you for watching this video. I encourage you to subscribe to this channel, to like the video, comment below, and give me your feedback, your questions, suggestions for the future. And I also encourage you to share this and the other videos with others. And in St. Francis of Assisi's favorite words of departure, may the Lord give you peace.
And you. So, what struck you in what Brother Dan said? Anything resonate?
Well, just the urgency to respond, to what we're learning. And, I think most of us aren't aware of all the implications of, the direction our society's moving, but we know it's negative in many ways. And so, now that we're being alerted to, what's going on, we need to act.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think he didn't mention, but some people say, I can't do anything about it anyhow, so I'm just going to live my life kind of thing. So there's that kind of thing too, but yeah.
Fatalism.
Right. He described a lot about the the role of technology. Did that resonate with anybody?
No, he's right.
Right.
He's right. This is a challenge. I mean, I think he's challenging us to do something. I don't know.
He's challenging us to be wiser and not taking the media as what we should think. But we have to be more discerning than watching other people's views of what we should be doing. We need to do our work and take it seriously.
Mhm.
And anyway, like in that section 47, he mentions the loneliness that can come when you you rely on the media and let's say text messages and et cetera, et cetera. It's never, it's it's not real. It's sort of real, but it's not real because you can have human connections which are real. And
Mhm.
and there's and as he says, there's a certain loneliness of just watching the media and having the media tell you this and that and the other thing, and there you are alone. You're not involved. You're just listening to someone else's opinion. That's got to be over.
Yeah.
And the opinions are out there, and
Yeah.
that sometimes they're really, tricked up, and but enough is enough.
Jeffrey, you had
I,
something.
I think Janine put a finger on something really important. It's also mentioned in that document in the contrast to technology on one key to moving forward is utilizing obviously technology, but it is the human relationships
Yeah.
that are the power that will bring about the change. It's the human encounters and the human relationships, and that's what people really are looking for. So that's also part of the hope. I think the young are looking for that. I think the old are looking for that, and everyone in between. It's that power of human relationships and human encounters, which in some ways we have, as a nation at least, and maybe as a world, we have abstracted ourselves, kind of like technology abstracts us as well. We become names and numbers, but not living, moving. But we are all that.
Yeah, I know, Jeff, I don't think if you might have noticed this, but I'm just saying, used to be that we would get longer emails from friends, et cetera, et cetera. Now the emails are not very frequent, but they're text messages. And the text messages are like, don't do this, do that. I mean, they're very short. And if you don't word them right, someone gets offended. And and it's not the way. It is not the way.
Yeah. Any other thoughts about something other than technology or?
I think there is something about the, like, they use the word integral a lot, but I think it's also about being integrated. And when you look at someone like Saint Francis, like he was connected to creation, he was connected to people, he didn't have these things to deal with, but like there were problems in his times, and his concern for poverty, and like he personified an ideal that is very hard to achieve. But like I think that if we are prepared and um, supported in our efforts to live Laudato Si in the parish, like it's sort of like Father Baldwin said, God's holy gifts for God's holy people. So I hope that we could move in that direction with this kind of awareness and bring joy to that process, because I think it won't work if we don't have that.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's true.
I think that's great. Well, that's one of the reasons that we wanted to bring you all together because we hope we can improve, strengthen our relationships with each other. And we're really lucky because on Sundays we actually do see each other in person. So this is
That's right.
a real gift, not just on the screen, but I'm hoping that, by listening carefully to what Pope Francis says, but each other as well, that we can come up with some concerted actions that we can take together, because when we do it together, it really does have impact. So again, thank you all for coming tonight. And I do want to end with our prayer.
Yeah.
Just enough time to do this here. And so how did you like Brother Dan?
He was
Oh,
terrific.
he was
I
Very
thought it was great.
informative.
He was right on.
very articulate.
Wonderful.
Mm.
He
And
doesn't,
young.
and
Yeah.
yeah, easy to look at.
And he knows what he knows.
He's very eloquent, I think.
Yeah.
So anyhow, so I will bring him back. So anyhow, but I did want to just mention one thing. I think everybody can see this perhaps. We're also trying to promote the Greener Lent, which is a way to actually act during Lent that relates to climate change. We haven't talked about lifestyles yet in any detail, but by refraining from eating beef, you're actually doing a lot.
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah.
So, and they're asking through Green Lent for you to choose which kind of fast you want to do. So it's fasting, it's praying, it's also almsgiving, and they're suggesting building wells in Africa where drought
Yeah.
due to climate change has impacted people. So, and I'm collecting names of people. I have 4 so far who have adopted this, and if we get to 10, we'll get on their graph. So I think
Sure.
love to do that. So let me know if you are interested in participating, and you can just sign up, go to greenerlent.org and then sign up under Sacred Heart. That would be great. And yeah, so we'll hope that we get more people doing that. So thank you again for coming. And I think I'll ask you to mute because I think 20 people makes it really weird. So is there anybody who would be willing to read this last part of the prayer, and you can unmute yourself? Who would do that? Kathy? Would you do that? Oh, wait a minute. You got to unmute yourself.
Whoops.
Yep,
Okay.
there you go. Okay,
Wait,
go.
you mean read what I'm seeing right here, a prayer for our earth?
Yeah, that would be good.
Okay.
Yeah.
O God of the poor, help us to rescue the abandoned and forgotten of this earth, so precious in your eyes. Bring healing to our lives that we may protect the world and not prey on it, that we may sow beauty, not pollution and destruction.
Amen.
We can all say amen.
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 So again,
Amen.
thanks so much, and we'll hope to see you and Brother Dan next week.
Thank you,
Thank
Fran.
Thank
you.
you.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Fran.
You're
Thank
welcome.
Wonderful.
you.
Thank you.
Work
Have a
out
good
some of the
night.
technical bugs here in the
Thank you, Fran.
You're
Thanks a
welcome.
lot.
Thanks,
Good
Fran.
night.
Thank you.
You.
Take
Good
care.
night.
See
Good night.
everyone.
Bye,
Take
Enjoy
care.
the snow. Enjoy the snow.
Yeah.
We
Yes.
will.
Thank you.
Okay, take care. Okay, so I'm ending.